talking about the important impact of this book. I'm going to be filming some stuff with my friends at The Conversationalist. I'll be with Clay Travis and Buck Sexton today, Kristen Hawkins, Charlie Kirk, Graham Allen, Dennis Prager, Lila Rose, every name that you know and love. We will be doing some book-related media with, which is very exciting. And I am coming to speak to a college campus or organization near you for my book tour over the next several weeks. Tomorrow I will be speaking, not tomorrow, Thursday I will be speaking at the University of Texas at Austin. On Monday, I'll be in Denver talking to the Colorado Federation of Young Republicans. On Tuesday, I'm headed back to my alma mater, Colorado State University in Fort Collins. Of next week, Wednesday the 27th, I'm at the University of Washington in Seattle. Pray for me because I think it might get a little nuts. Thursday the 28th, I'm at Auburn University, War Eagle in Auburn, Alabama. And then taking a little bit of a break after that to round things out on the college campus side of things at Franciscan University of Steubenville in Ohio. Whoop, whoop. There's lots of exciting stuff going on, and I'm going to be talking about all of it on my social media. So stay tuned about all the announcements related to speaking engagements, media, podcasts, meet and greet, book signings, all of the above near you. As I said, since I'm in New York and have maybe the busiest book launch day ever, today's show is pre-recorded. It probably will be for the rest of the week until Friday, when I will be popping in from the book tour to let you guys know what's going on. And we have a very special interview on Friday. But unrelated to the book, I have gotten just a deluge of requests from you guys to react to an interview from last weekend that was so freaking good. I was like literally dying watching this interview of excitement because of how good it truly was. And everybody's been asking me to react to it. So that's what we're going to do on all of our channels today, is react to Pearl Davis on Michael Knowles with the Daily Wire, talking about the red pill manosphere community, talking about hookup culture, all of it. And it's going to be really, really good. Before we jump into all of that, please do me a favor, and if you haven't already liked this video, please do so. That could look like a little thumbs up or a heart, depending on where you're watching. And most importantly, smash that subscribe or follow button to help us continue growing one person, one day at a time on all of our channels. Bum, bum, bum. I'm going to be jazzed up. I'm pre-recording this on Monday. I'm going to be jazzed up tomorrow on New York coffee, on a fat New York bagel. I'm just thinking about myself like 24 hours in the future, and life looks bright is all I'm saying. Life is about to be very good. And to appease all of you, no, I will not be riding the subway, okay? Do not freak out. I'm not about to get stabbed or shot in the head on the subway. We're just living the New York minute. Quick little New York minute. In and out. It'll be great. I've been asked about this red pill manosphere thing for so long. And honestly, it's difficult for me to articulate in words how I feel about all of it, because on one hand, I'm so grateful that people like Andrew Tate and the people behind the Fresh and Fit podcast, and even sometimes guests that they bring on the Whatever podcast, Pearl Davis and all of the stuff that she's working on. I'm so grateful that all of these people are correctly diagnosing the problems in society. They are correctly diagnosing the problems of feminism and the lies that feminism is telling the world. They are correctly diagnosing the problems of hookup culture and meaningless relationships. They are correctly diagnosing rampant divorce rates skyrocketing and low marriage rates, and noticing something is broken in society. And maybe even largely bigger than just the word dating and the word relationship, outside of dating and relationship culture, they are correctly diagnosing that there really are no voices standing up for strong masculinity at the 30,000 foot level in society. I personally know tons on social media, and they are growing every single day. But in terms of like mega influencers and huge podcasts outside of like Jordan Peterson, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. In the social media sphere, Jordan Peterson, to the degree that he is famous worldwide, and that in America, you know, Charlie Kirk, Brandon Tatum, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, all of those people are doing the right things. But on the global scale, there is really one voice actually encouraging men to be men, and that is Jordan Peterson. So I'm in 100% agreement with these people that there is a problem that needs diagnosing, both on the men's masculinity cultural front and on the dating and relationship cultural front, largely because of the lies of feminism. But as supportive as I am of their diagnosis and in line with their diagnosis I personally am frustrated that they seem to be prescribing the wrong solutions to fix the problems that they are correctly diagnosing. And what do I mean by that? I think we often hear from the Andrew Tates and the Fresh and Fit podcasts of the world that for a man to be a strong man, to embrace his masculinity, he needs to never get married because marriage ties you down and is specifically an institution designed against you to steal all of your money, which is silly in my opinion. Can it be manipulated that way? Yes. Is that what marriage is? No, not at all. Marriage is a fast track to success and happiness and fulfillment for you if you are a man. So I don't really agree with that assessment. That if you are a man and you want to embrace your masculinity, you need to work really hard and make a lot of money so that you can drive really fancy sports cars and sleep with as many women as possible because you're exerting your dominance as a man, as the dominant gender. Well, sleeping with as many people as possible is not good for men or for women. And it's weird to me that these people say women with body counts, the number of people that she may or may not have slept with, of 0 is good. That's virtuous. If a woman has a body count before marriage of any number, she is not virtuous. She is a vice to society. She needs to be avoided at all costs. So they want women to get married to have sex. But men are never supposed to get married. They're supposed to just sleep with people who have a body count of 0. But eventually they're going to run out of people to sleep with because nobody is going to have a body count of 0. None of it mathematically makes any sense to me. The math ain't mathin'. So there's really this focus in the red pill manosphere alpha male community of completely degrading the value of marriage, that it is in fact an outdated institution, that it's designed against men and it's going to steal all of your money and your pride and your dignity, so you should never get married. There's an overemphasis in the red pill manosphere alpha male community of consumerism, that stuff, a very lucrative job, a lot of money, a fancy sports car is going to bring you fulfillment and status in life that nothing else is going to bring you, that you can't find in relationships, you have to find in material possessions, which I think is a problem. And I've noticed a really interesting trend just in general towards both atheism and Islam in the red pill manosphere alpha male community that I find fascinating because those are complete counterintuitive opposites of one another. And yet there's a big gravitation towards converting to Islam. We saw that with several different mainstream manosphere alpha male red pill influencers in the last couple of years, or just rejecting the idea of morality based in a sense of God, whatever you want to define that as, period, from both men and women supporting these ideas. And so while I'm looking at all of these things, I'm like, yes, you're correctly diagnosing the problem. 100% I am on board with you. Then it turns around and I'm like, actually, whether you intended for this to happen or not, you are saying the exact same thing that the radical left is saying in radical feminism. What do I mean by that? Radical feminism is telling women, you don't need a man. You need to sleep with as many people as possible because instead of actual commitment and monogamy, that's going to hold you back. Instead of marriage and having one committed relationship for the rest of your life, that's going to hold you back. The only way you can feel really good about yourself is sleeping with as many men as possible and never being tied down so that you can feel dominant, so that you can feel empowered and liberated from the bondages of the patriarchy. So emphasis on degrading the value of marriage and sleeping with as many people as possible, promoting hookup culture, both alpha male red pill community, manosphere, and radical leftist feminism, which then goes even one step further and says, and also never, ever, ever have a baby because that's going to hurt your personal life. So we have this convenient solution for you over here in a beautiful pink bow called Planned Parenthood. Interesting that they're coming up with the same solutions for radically different problems that they are perceiving in society. Okay, so that was number one. Number two, emphasis on career and material possessions and consumerism. The red pill alpha male manosphere community telling men you need to make as much money as possible. You need to have a sports car. You need to have all these fancy houses. Like, that's going to make you feel happy. Your career needs to come first instead of your relationships. Radical feminism from the left is telling women your career needs to come before all else because that's where you're going to get the most satisfaction. This girl boss, hustle, make your way to the top, be a CEO, or your life basically means nothing. You can never be a stay-at-home mom, for example. How dare you even suggest that that's a radical career path for women to obtain and is a good thing for us to be striving for. Everything has to come secondary to your career because you are a hustler, because you are a boss, girl. You got this. Stilettos and designer bags accompanying all of it so that you can afford the red bottom shoes and the Gucci belt and the Louis Vuitton handbag so that you can work in the corner office in New York City and live in the zillion-dollar penthouse apartment. That's what's going to make you happy. So both are purporting this idea of hyper-consumerism and promoting your career and material possessions above relationships, which I find really, really fascinating. And I just am noticing, maybe it's just me, but third-party observation here, despite diagnosing dramatically different perceived problems in society, both the hyper-supposed right-wing red pill manosphere alpha male community and the radical leftist feminism, like sixth wave feminism community that we are operating in at this point in time, are telling men and women, respectively, the same thing. Your relationships don't matter. Sex is transactional and is purely for your own physical enjoyment. Your career needs to come first. Your material possessions will bring you happiness. And we know, objectively, looking around at society, none of that is true. That we've sacrificed meaningful depth of true love for convenience of hookup cultures and dating apps and casual relationships. We've sacrificed intimate relationships, not just physically or romantically, but even with our friends and our family at the altar of our career, at the corporate altar of being a boss, both literally and metaphorically. We've sacrificed serving others, which brings about such a pure form of joy in bringing joy to other people, at the altar of obtaining as many material possessions and earthly wealth as possible. And all of the above, both this red pill thing and radical feminism, are rejecting an objective, based in God sense of morality. That's been my observation. And that might not be your observation, but that certainly happens to be what I've noticed over the last several years. So yeah, I do kind of have a problem in agreeing with, objectively, all of the points of the red pill man community, because I think it's giving really, really bad advice to men about what true masculinity is supposed to look like. For me, I cannot even begin to separate what true masculinity is supposed to look like from what God designed masculinity to be. And I'm going to cover that on the other side of this. But Michael Knowles, who I think would agree with my general worldview on all of this, decided to have Pearl Davis, you guys might know her as just Pearly Things from social media, on his podcast over the weekend. And they had a very, very fiery conversation about this. Pearl would agree more with the red pill side of things. You guys have been begging me to react to this, so let's check it out.
The divorce courts are jilted toward women or whatever. But like the woman who goes to university, I'm sure you get these letters, I get them too. Mm-hmm. Woman who goes to a university is told, hook up with every guy you can, study some...
She chooses to, not told.
She's also told.
I don't know, Pearl. Women are told hook up with everybody that you can. By celebrities, by influencers, by pop culture.
Told, and she chooses to.
Yeah,
she's also told by the culture.
Because that's what she wants to do.
But she's also told to do it by the culture. You can't downplay that, right?
You can be told to do so. I could be told to jump off a bridge. It doesn't mean
right, I know, but you just said she's not told that. And I'm saying she very much is told that by the culture.
I'm saying she doesn't have to listen. I think it takes accountability off of women when we're constantly saying that the world told you to, and that's why you did it.
No. I agree that their wills have been malformed and that our entire education system, broadly speaking, and now indulges the lower passions and denies the rational will and denies even the place of reason and truth in public life. But so she does that, and she makes bad choices, and she picks some dumb major.
I'm going to pause that really quick because that is really, really powerful to me. Michael just articulated that in a way I never could have come up with on the spot. That was so well said, so well articulated. It is both a choice of individual free will, of indulging the lower stratosphere, if you will, of human desire, rather than higher rational thinking and rational objective morality. And that is both an individual choice, but it's also permeated the entire education system. It's permeated our social media feeds. It's permeated the entertainment industry. It's permeated our sex education classes that are largely taught by Planned Parenthood. It's permeated the dating world and the idea that it's easier to meet people online rather than in person, which is a study that came out this week now that the majority of couples meet online. So when you're constantly surrounded by this information, yes, it is both an individual choice, but it is also because of the shifting cultural norms in society that create a change in the tone of what is considered moral, of what is considered good and true and beautiful. You cannot separate one from the other, the way that I think Pearl is trying to maybe oversimplify this, that it really does just come down to the individual choice. I don't think it's quite that simple.
And she graduates and she's told, don't get married. You got to move to the city and you got to sleep with 1,000 men and you got to get a job working as a middle manager at a widget factory. And you're going to do that and you're going to totally bypass your childbearing years, sleeping around and going out for brunch and working for Mr. McGillicuddy at the widget factory.
She chooses to do that.
She's choosing it and she's making a poor choice and she's being encouraged to do it by a fallen culture.
She's being encouraged.
And then she's going to wake up one day and she's going to be about 34 and she's going to regret all of these decisions and she's going to cry into TikTok. That's what's going to happen. That is a consequence. Living with the consequences of being used by men, of not being able to have a harder time getting married, not having kids, and
why is it that? What?
That's a consequence.
I'm sorry. I've been cutting you off a couple times.
Okay.
I do
it's all right.
apologize.
I've got thick skin.
I do. I don't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
But because my question is, why do we always say is used by men?
Because men
women
use women for sex.
No,
they
but
have
women
since the dawn of time. Men have used women for sex since the dawn of time. That is not anti-man to say that. That is not anti-masculinity to say that. That is not anti-anything to say that. That's just objectively true throughout human history. Period, full stop. You're not like a fake conservative if all of a sudden you're saying stuff like that, which a lot of people have been attacking Michael for, by the way, in the last couple of days, that he hates men secretly and he's not a real conservative. No, that's just objectively part of human history, and it's okay to acknowledge that.
women don't use, there are women that hunt top men down and try to sleep with them.
I'm sure the top men are at the top. I mean, I don't know what top men.
But I know,
probably some pickup artist.
Even the way you describe it, it's like always putting it on the men.
Because men and women react differently to sex, and because men tend to pursue in sex, and women tend to be pursued. Because
oh no, not the top guys.
What do you mean by a top guy?
Yeah, like I've interviewed. I had Brittany Renner on my show. Do you know who that is?
I don't.
There are girls that. They learn she talks about this. They learn every single thing about, like, they become targets, the men.
Yeah.
And they get the guys to sleep with them. They try to steal condoms. Like,
But who's a top man? You mentioned.
Before they even go into that, even if that is true, even if there are some women who are trying to manipulate men and be the instigator, be the initiator of this stuff, and are highly, highly manipulative in the process. That might be true for some individuals, but I don't think that's the cut and dry rule at large for society. Generally speaking, psychologically speaking, men and women are different. Generally speaking, women tend to be on the receiving end of people initiating physical intimacy. Men tend to be on the initiating end of people engaging in physical intimacy. That's just psychologically true of the differences between men and women. Are there anomalies? Absolutely. Of course there are. There's always anomalies to every cut and dry societal and biological rule like that. But that doesn't change the norm, and that doesn't change the general rule at large. So I'm really curious to see how they hop in here and talk about what makes a top man. I think the other term that people have been saying for a long time is like high value man. Let's see what they have to say.
A woman who's a top man. And am I?
Well, this is something.
I love how he keeps asking that. Yes, Michael, you are a top man. I got you, fam.
If you were dating again, you might be.
I would be. All right, that's good.
You might be. I mean, women, when there's money,
Just my money? It's not my sparkling personality and my good looks. All right.
Look at there.
Okay.
But I just noticed in the language, like somehow it's always the men's fault when we talk about sin. So even in that sin,
women sin, but women are easily women are taken advantage of because
I disagree.
Do you think men and women relate to sex in the same way?
I think that at times women have more sexual power than men.
I'm not denying.
And so
women always have more
women,
sexual power
I mean,
than
women
men.
take advantage of. You could say women take advantage of lonely men on OnlyFans.
But they do. What I'm asking is, do you think that men and women relate to sex in the same way?
No.
They don't. That's why
not.
we talk about men and women in sex differently, and we ascribe different moral.
Right, but I think your
categories.
accountability for the action is still, it's on you. So I don't think when women sin, it's the fault of society. I don't think it's the fault, the men are just using you.
Huh.
You know,
That's really interesting. And I actually agree with that. I think there is a problem of the fact that society has lied to so many women and has indoctrinated so many women to still make individual choices that fall back on her 100%. But I think the two have to go hand in hand. They can't be separated from one another. You can't say that all of these women are manipulative, horrible people that are making these calculated choices at the individual level at the expense of men without acknowledging something culturally had to change to get us to this point. Because historically, we haven't had the problems of OnlyFans. We haven't had the problems of these women going after the high value man that we talk about all the time. We haven't seen that in human history really until now. So yes, men and women are both directly responsible for their individual sinful choices, but that doesn't mean that society didn't also play a factor into that. I think they're both saying the same thing, but they're like talking past each other and they're making it look like more of an argument than it actually is.
I think that when women do that, it's a choice.
Sure. Do you think
And
people
I
can be
don't-
deceived?
I think women play dumb a lot. It's like I'll interview these women on abortion, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know. What, you didn't have Google?"
Yeah. Well, you say they play dumb, which they do, but are they dumb
but
sometimes?
that's fine.
That's what I'm asking.
Well,
You would
sort
say
of.
yes. You would say yes.
Yeah,
but people
but
obviously can be deceived.
They can be deceived, but you're still accountable for the choices that you make. And I don't necessarily, I think sometimes it's just the easier choice. Like women don't want to do the hard thing.
What's the hard thing?
I would say it's easy to sleep around.
Yeah,
That's an easy thing to do. Women are
it's a
picking-
temptation for
women
men
are-
too.
Correct,
more for men
but
than
it's easier for women.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Correct. But that's the getting.
That's kind of why I
Yeah.
attack the guys for using women.
But
is
what
bec- yeah.
what percent of men are even using women? It's like 80% of women are involved in hookup culture, maybe 5% of men.
Yeah.
And I can tell
don't
you,
know about that. I would need to see a statistic to prove that 5% of men are involved in hookup culture. Where did that number come from? Because I don't buy that.
I could even say this like from doing my show. I'll interview a guy. He's sleeping with like 3, 4. He'll go on
Yeah, that's
3,
bad.
4 chicks from the show.
Right, that's bad, right? That's bad. You would say that's a bad thing for him.
Sure, but my point is more women. There's 5 women partaking in it where there's 1 man.
But
And
it's one man doing it 5 times as much as the women. That's why
Right, but-
Correct. That's interesting.
why I'm knocking the men.
But my point is more women are responsible for hookup culture than men.
But the men are
constantly
more.
putting it-
You just acknowledged the men are more culpable in that they are doing it more frequently than the women.
No, I would say
The men are the ones initiating that. The women are the receiving end. That's so interesting psychologically to think about. I see where both of them are coming from. I see Pearl's point that numerically, if you're thinking about a situation, this is just an anecdote. This is not an objective statistic or piece of data. Anecdotally, if there's 1 man sleeping around with 20 different women, that's terrible. That's horrible. But it's 20 women to 1 man from a ratio perspective that have agreed to participate in this. But Michael's saying, but yeah, the intention could be a factor that outweighs the numerical ratio. That is fascinating to think about. I never thought about it that way.
there's 5 women, so it's way more.
But they're
common for women to do
individually
it.
each doing it with the same guy.
But I'm talking about like you're basically saying to men, oh, don't sleep. Most men can't. Most men aren't.
Which is good. That's
So-
actually a great limitation of their ugliness.
Yeah, fine. But it's like
Their
it's
lack
like,
of riz.
But it's just so funny, the riz. But it's funny because it's like the hookup culture. Women are more responsible for hookup culture than men. And if
Right,
there's
'cause
10 women,
because
if there's 10 women that partake in it, there's less men that can't.
No, women are more responsible for hookup culture than men because they allow men to sleep with them. And they're the ones who are being pursued. So I agree with you on that.
So Michael's saying that's interesting, that women are like the gatekeepers of physical intimacy. And I actually would agree with that. They said earlier that Pearl was saying women have a lot more sexual power than men. And Michael said, actually, I agree with you. Women have the power over gatekeeping this stuff. And he just reemphasized that idea, that concept, that women have the capacity to engage in it or to shut it down. And I think men generally are just always trying to initiate, but women are the ones who get to make that final decision and have the power to do that, which is a really, really powerful and important position to be in physical relationships. I think we downgrade that a lot in society. We say that women are second tier, that they're not the powerful one in the relationship. At least we say that from a feminist perspective to women, that it's a man's world and we're all just living in it, that you are subject to men in this patriarchy and life is so terrible for you, so you need to take back the power from men. Arguably, I think women really have a lot of the power, at least in this particular example of relationships, and nobody really likes to talk about that.
Well, the top men are, the women are pursuing them. I would, if you look at but
Yeah. Again, do we have an example of a top man?
I mean, examples that I think of, and I know because this is always where the convo goes. Then it's like the religion decides who's a top man, but I'm talking about like who women.
No, this is the first I'm hearing this
Okay.
term, and I would like it to apply to me, but perhaps it won't. So who's
Okay,
a top man?
an example of a type of man that women go for is, say, athletes.
Yeah. Sneaker
that's-
chasers, jersey chasers, we call them.
Yeah, correct. I'm saying like in those examples, the women are pursuing them. It's not the women being innocent and used. It's women driving to the games, getting a hotel.
Yeah, they're interested.
Stalking. There was one chick. God, it was crazy. She tells me that God, it's just such a crazy story. They literally figure out where there's what do you call it? A hangout, I guess, after games where the athletes all go and the wives aren't there. And there are women that go there and try to get men to cheat on their wives.
Groupies. They're like groupies.
Yeah. Yeah, but my point is there are far more women responsible for hookup culture than men. But yet, when I go on podcasts, we always somehow bring the conversation back to the men, even though far more women are engaging in it.
This is, I guess,
and we
why.
can't even definitively say don't date a woman that did sex work.
I find this kind of utilitarian view of responsibility actually kind of delightful when you say, look, there's 5 women who are doing it, though I think it does cut the other way because each of these total Sigma Chad dudes are sleeping with 5 women each. So I think either way it kind of cuts. But that's not really my question at all. My question is, don't men have a moral responsibility to act in a certain way?
Men cannot lead women that don't want to be led. Yes,
then,
yes.
hold on,
You didn't answer the question there, though. The question wasn't, can men lead women? The question was, do men have an objective moral responsibility to lead in a certain way? Regardless of who they're leading, the specific type of woman. Do men have the responsibility to do that? I would argue 1,000% yes. Men have an objective moral responsibility to lead society towards goodness, beauty, and truth. Period, full stop. Both for other men in the world, but also for women in the world. 100% agree with that perspective.
Yes. Wait. I'm gonna
Yes,
finish.
okay.
Let me finish, Mike.
Okay, I was trying to lead you.
Sorry. No. I do think men have a moral responsibility to act in a certain way. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, there you
But
have it.
I don't think men have to get married if there are not enough wives to go around.
But
there are.
It's like it doesn't.
if there are not enough
compute.
women who you say are marriageable.
You know what's so crazy?
What?
Under the age of 35.
Yeah.
Now the problem is with a lot of these. I know we're gonna go back.
Statistics are all fake, but I'm happy to hear them.
Well, I'd believe it too, just from interviewing 1,000 women.
Sure.
5 to 15% of women under 35 are on full OnlyFans, cam, or some sort of sex work. According, there's a guy who does research for me. He's really,
okay.
Dr. David Baker. He's like a published author, really smart guy.
That seems high to me.
That's what I thought
really
too.
high.
I swear to God, that's what I thought. Until I interviewed 1,000 women. I can't even count how many sex workers I've met.
But don't you think the
we
kind of
interviewed
women?
random. No.
You don't think the kind of women who go on
No, not at all.
relationship podcasts
No.
are kind of self-selecting?
Yeah, I think that's skewed. That has to be skewed to some capacity. When I go on the whatever podcast, and you guys have seen other clips of the show even when I haven't been there, of course that's self-selecting a little bit. That's skewing national representative data. The people that are going to be agreed to be interviewed by a Pearl Davis is probably self-selecting to some capacity. 5% I might even believe, 15% I don't, but that would seem really shockingly high.
Don't you think the trad women just don't go on camera?
Yes.
That's been my experience.
No.
No, I think that. I
No,
think
Yes.
I would say when you do when you interview 1,000 women, you just start to see patterns. I've had Christian women on. I've had women from Eastern Europe. I've had women. We don't select.
Eastern Europe
for,
is like the hotbed of pornography in the world, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I could say Japan. I could keep going. I'm in London, so it's pretty international.
I guess my only point is
And-
women who go on shows to be interviewed tend to be a little less trad than the women who stay home and
True.
bake bread.
Most people would just say, I'm not going to go be on one of these shows if you're a trad girl, trad woman.
You know a lot of women under the age of 30 that
Yeah.
are staying home and baking bread.
I do.
Yeah, I do
I think
too.
that it's, again, as I've said, you guys are a bit out of touch to what the average man is experiencing dating in this country.
Or are we just in touch with a different group of people? I guess is my point. You're right.
Ah, well said, Michael. Well said.
When one surrounds oneself
Mm-hmm.
with people who are divorced or with people who are on OnlyFans or whatever, then it kind of skews where you would find the median or the average. But if you spend your time in like the middle of America with like in nice parishes.
Well, you just contradicted yourself because earlier you said that you had close friends that were divorced.
I do.
So even
but it's not the average.
Even in your circles, you still
Well, I'm from New York and I lived in LA, so I wasn't always living
right.
in
But that's why sometimes I'm like, do you not see reality? Like, do you guys not see what's going on out here?
Yeah,
And
I agree
religious
that-
attendance in the younger generation, it's going down. Slower than ever.
Yeah, sure. Though again, you kind of got to
Actually,
get
no, it's swinging back up. I talk about this a lot related to my book media. In 2021, less than 25% of Gen Zers said that we believed in God. Less than a quarter. By the end of 2023, over a third of our generation in America says that we believe in God and are regularly practicing some sort of religious practice. So it actually is on the upswing, contrary to what Pearl just said, which I find really interesting and encouraging for that matter.
a little bit more specific about it because the people, first of all, there is a movement of young people going back to churches, and they're going back to the more orthodox ones. They're not going to the hippy-dippy, egalitarian feminist ones.
Yeah.
So, again, this is why I find the statistical arguments to be kind of fruitless, which is, okay, when we say something is natural, we mean it in two ways, right? We mean it in it deriving from the principles of nature, like, a tree sprouts from the ground, and we mean it in a way that involves free will. Like, you can make a natural choice or an unnatural choice. And so I guess what I'm suggesting is we live at a time that is exalting really unnatural and disordered behaviors, especially in the circles you're talking about. And I'm suggesting maybe we ought to focus on these circles that are growing in a lot of places where there is a return toward reasonable behavior.
There's a return to reasonable behavior, a return to objective truth, a return to objective morality, what's good and true and beautiful, a return to what built this country and made it great. Michael's been reading, people. We love to see it. He had me on his show very early on in book-related media, and I'm so grateful. If you guys haven't had a chance to see that, it was a great interview. Wow, what a powerful exchange. I see where both of them are coming from, and I think a lot of it is a challenge of perspective. Which one are you going to focus on more? Are we going to buy into this idea that everything is always going downhill, that everybody is always doom and gloom, that it's only going to get worse? Or are we willing to wake up and see some positives about where things are going right again, where people are rejecting where we're at to go forward in a better direction? Not backwards, but to go forward in a better direction. He mentioned something there at the very end that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's this idea of it's all about free will. Everything's about free will. Everything's about free choices, freedom, maximizing liberty, etc. I think where these political conversations often go astray when you remove the concept of God, who is the author of morality, from the conversation, is that you'll often hear from more conservative individuals, more right-wing individuals, our ultimate goal is to maximize human freedom. And from a completely secular vantage point and perspective, that sounds incredible. That sounds like we are fighting for the individual. We are fighting for goodness. We are fighting for people to be free from the constraints of regulation and too powerful authoritarianism and a totalitarian government. Maximizing human freedom is a noble goal. But as soon as you inject God back into the picture, maximizing human freedom cannot lead to a thriving society if you are not also engaging in conversations about moral objectivity, about a completely third-party, objective, total concept of moral good and bad, of right and wrong, of virtue and vice. I was at the gala last week on Thursday for PragerU in Palm Beach, and it was so much fun. Oh my gosh, I love the Breakers, beautiful hotel, and I love PragerU. You guys know that was my first job out of college. Dennis is, to this day, maybe the most impactful person on my personal political philosophy, other than maybe a Jordan Peterson. And I love hearing Dennis speak. And it was interesting because, he doesn't ever really prepare his remarks. He just kind of goes off the cuff. And what he was focusing on Thursday was very timely for this discussion we're having right now, that God is the source of wisdom. If you remove God from anything, from a college campus, from politics, from culture at large, you are removing wisdom from society because you no longer have a moral hierarchy of right and wrong. Instead, you have this parallel of what some people think is right and some people think is wrong, and they're all kind of fighting with each other on this even playing field instead of a moral hierarchy of this is right, this is what we should achieve, this is what we should strive for, this is what the pinnacle of society is that we need to be putting on the top of the mountain and climbing to, versus this is what we know is bad, this is what we know is a vice, what we know is evil, and what we think is less than what is good in society. And he was so eloquent in describing all of this in terms of how it has affected our intimate relationships, how it has affected education, how it has affected the media and politics. And I think the exact same thing can be true for what Michael just said. This really does boil down to free will, but are we maximizing free will in terms of maximizing human freedom, maximizing liberty from a secular viewpoint that also inherently maximizes evil? Maximizes sin, because we have maximized freedom, this part, without this part of moral hierarchy and moral objectivity? Or are we maximizing liberty for the individual while also engaging in a larger cultural battle for what is good, true, and beautiful at the same time? They are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they have to go hand in hand. And that brings me to this idea of what is a high value man? What is a moral answer to what a top man or a high value man is? And I said before we started reacting to the clip, I can't possibly begin to define what a true strong man, what a truly masculine man is, with removing God from the conversation. Pearl seemed annoyed by that in this podcast interview. She said it always comes back to religion and religious definitions of masculinity and religious definitions of manhood. Yeah, I think it has to, actually, if you believe in God, because God created us uniquely as men and women. God created us with unique roles in relation to one another that perfectly complement each other as man and woman. And God demands moral, courageous leadership from men, which is that question that Michael asked at the end. Do men have an objective moral responsibility, obligation to lead people in what is considered good, in truth? And the answer is yes. They both agreed on that. A true man, a truly masculine man, doesn't follow these prescribed solutions from either radical feminism or the red pill manosphere alpha male community. They would value marriage because that is the highest pinnacle of leadership in one's personal life that you could possibly achieve to, leading your family towards God and towards moral objectivity. They would value marriage in submitting both themselves to their wife and their wife to them in mutual respect and adoration and committed love to one another. Men, if they are truly masculine, would be seeking moral clarity and leadership from the source of morality himself, God by regularly attending church and believing in God and submitting himself to a moral authority that is not just the individual, because we as human beings are sinful. Our desires, our needs, our wants change at the drop of a dime, but an unchanging, ever-present, all-knowing, all-powerful God does not change, which is obviously where we need to be drawing the source of our moral inspiration and truly masculine leadership in society from. There were tons of other super viral moments from that podcast, so I highly encourage you watch the entire episode of Pearl Davis sitting down with Michael Knowles. It was incredibly eye-opening to me how different people are approaching these issues. And like I said, I think everybody is diagnosing the problems correctly, but the solutions that we're prescribing matter just as more, if not more, than correctly diagnosing the problems when it comes to relationships between men and women. Who did you agree with in that clip more, Michael or Pearl? Let me know in the comments of this video. Don't forget to go give some love to the headline sponsor of our live stream, our friends over at Public Square, America's largest marketplace nationwide of pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom businesses. You never have to second guess who you are supporting when you purchase from these companies. Public Square takes care of all of that for you, and they are changing American culture from the inside out. You can download the Public Square app using the link in the description of this video, or just head to their website, publicsquare.com. Add your business if you are a business owner of any kind, coffee shop, travel agency, you sell t-shirts, no matter what it is. I hear amazing testimonies from you guys about the businesses that you have added to this platform and how much it's changed your life. And if you're looking to support companies that share your values, check them all out at Public Square. Today is the day. This is coming to your guys' house if you've already pre-ordered. And if you haven't pre-ordered yet, you guys can pick this up anywhere that you buy books. Amazon preferred, please. I know we really hate on Amazon, but it's the easiest way to help your favorite authors hit a bestseller list, and it'll be at your house very, very quickly. Go get your hands or your ears on a copy, because I did the audiobook of my new book, The End of the Alphabet. That's it for now. Signing off from New York City. We're doing a fun little book launch Q&A over in my locals community for our locals supporters tonight, where you guys are getting a free signed copy of the book if you had pre-ordered or signed up to be an annual locals supporter in the last couple of weeks when I was making that announcement. So I hope you guys join us over there by supporting our locals community. I love you guys so, so very much. We will be back for more content tomorrow from New York City. Bye!